Hey guys! Tonight we creep through the polished halls of a grand Victorian townhouse, where the air smells of beeswax and coal smoke, and the creak of floorboards echoes like a whispered secret. Picture yourself tiptoeing past gilt-framed portraits, their stern faces watching, as a distant clatter of pots betrays the servants toiling below. You're here to uncover why Victorian servants were treated like slaves. There lives a grind of endless work, rigid rules, and lost freedom in the 19th century's glittering empire. Trust me, you probably wouldn't survive a day scrubbing those grates, let alone the weight of their invisible chains. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I love knowing where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the grand foyer, the chandelier above glinting like a crown. But the real story's in the shadows behind the green baize door to the servants' quarters. It's the 1860s, and Britain's at its imperial peak, with mansions like this one dotting London, each a machine powered by servants who scrub, cook, and bow, their lives not their own. You're not here for the lords and ladies sipping tea upstairs. You're here for the maids, footmen, and scullions, whose labor built this world but whose treatment mirrored slavery's cruelty, a truth hidden beneath the era's velvet and lace. You're a housemaid, let's call you Eliza, and you're feeling the weight of a life where every hour belongs to someone else. Let's start with a mainstream fact. Victorian households relied heavily on domestic servants, with over 1.5 million in England by 1861, mostly women, working in roles from maids to cooks, as recorded in census data. They were essential to the middle and upper classes, maintaining homes that showcased wealth and status. But their conditions, long hours, low pay, strict control, stripped them of autonomy. You're polishing a silver candlestick, your hands raw, and you're exhausted, knowing the mistress, Lady Margaret, expects perfection by dawn. This job's your lifeline, but it's also a cage. The grandeur of this house is stark contrast to the drudgery we'll see in the kitchen, where your freedom's traded for a pittance. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Servants were sometimes given character books, pocket-sized records their employers signed, rating their obedience like a report card. In the 1860s, these were common, a must-have to get another job if you left. You're slipping yours into your apron, its pages filled with Lady Margaret's curt satisfactory, and grinning. It's like a Victorian LinkedIn profile. But one bad review could leave you jobless. You're half wishing you could scribble your own notes about her temper, but the bell's jangle upstairs pulls you back, a reminder of the control that binds you, like the myths we debunked in other Victorian tales. But not everyone agrees on why servants were treated so harshly. Historians still argue whether their conditions were driven by economic necessity or a deliberate system to reinforce class divides, with no clear motive in household ledgers or memoirs. Some, citing employers' dependence, say low wages and strict rules were practical to maintain large staffs. Others, pointing to social attitudes, argue it was about dehumanizing the lower orders to uphold power, like the gossip chains we saw in parlors. You're dusting a marble bust, the foyer's opulence mocking, and wondering if Lady Margaret sees you as a person or a cog, the weight of her orders echoing the wedding night fears we felt. Where control was king. Step closer to the baize door and notice the details. The cool brass handle, the faint clatter of dishes below, the way the chandelier's crystals catch the gaslight, glittering like false promises. This house is a stage, like those bridal chambers we trembled in. But it's a prison for you, Eliza, where every task is a chain. You're feeling the paradox, you're vital, keeping this mansion alive, but invisible. Your life owned by bells and orders, the societal rules we've met in tea rooms, now a hierarchy that crushes you. You're thinking of that character book, a frail shield against dismissal, and how it ties to a world that demands your labor but not your voice. Like the laudanum vials we saw numbing other pains. Time for a quick joke. Why was the candlestick so shiny? Because Eliza's dreams were polished away. You're smirking, but it's quiet. The butler's footsteps nearby keep you alert. You're catching the foyer's hush, a maid's shadow darting past, and sensing the stakes. Servants like you weren't just workers. You were property, bound by rules as tight as a corset. Your day's a grind to uphold someone else's glory. You're wondering about the girl who polished this candlestick before you. If she broke under the strain or fled, her story lost in the house's gleam. The fear's not just physical, it's existential. A life where you're less than the silver you clean. As you push through the baize door, the foyer's glow fading. You're descending into the servant's world, the kitchen's heat and clamor waiting. Your role as Eliza, a weight you can't shed. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just about one house, it's about a society built on your back, where servants were essential but expendable, their treatment a mirror to slavery's shadow. You're thinking of those character books, binding you like the wedding night's laws, and how they reflect a world that valued order over humanity. You're wondering about the servant you'll be, if you'll endure or crack, and the thousands like you. Their lives unseen. The door swings shut, the kitchen beckons, and you're carrying this heavy truth, ready to explore the hierarchy that ruled your days. A ladder with no top for you. One last chuckle. Why was the foyer so grand? Because it hid Eliza's tears better. You're stepping into the stairwell, the chandelier's light gone, as the kitchen's din rises, with the servants' struggles heavy in your heart. You're ready to dive into the harsh hierarchy that bound them, a system as rigid as the house's walls. You're descending the narrow, creaky backstairs of the Victorian townhouse, the air growing damp and heavy with the scent of boiling cabbage and coal ash from the kitchen below. The flicker of a single rushlight barely lights your way. And you're Eliza, a housemaid in the 1860s. Your apron starched, but your hands raw from scrubbing. The grand foyer's chandelier is a memory, replaced by the clatter of pots and the butler's sharp orders echoing up. You're here to explore the harsh hierarchy that bound Victorian servants, a rigid pecking order that kept you in place, as tightly controlled as the society we glimpsed upstairs. This is the unseen machine of servitude, and you're feeling its weight. Like the tray you're balancing, heavy with the mistress's breakfast dishes. The mainstream fact is that Victorian households operated under a strict domestic hierarchy, with servants ranked from butlers and housekeepers at the top to scullery maids at the bottom, as detailed in household manuals like Mrs. Beeton's Book of Household Management 1861. Each role had specific duties, pay, and privileges, with senior staff enforcing discipline over juniors like you. You're dodging a footman's glare as you reach the kitchen, knowing the housekeeper, Mrs. Carter, rules your days, reporting to Lady Margaret, whose bell we heard last time. You're a lower maid, scrubbing floors while the butler dines better. Your place in this ladder as fixed as the cobwebs you're meant to sweep. A system that mirrors the parlor's social code we felt, only crueler. But here's a quirky tidbit. Servants' ranks were signaled by livery badges, embroidered patches on uniforms showing their role, like a maid's broom or a footman's boot, sewn onto aprons or jackets. In the 1860s, Taylor's records list these, a visible mark of your station. You're tugging at your badge, a tiny mop, and grinning it's like a Victorian name tag. But it brands you as bottom tier, no better than that character book we carried. You're half wishing you could swap it for the butler's silver key badge. But Mrs. Carter's snap to hurry up pulls you back. The hierarchy's grip as tight as the stairs' narrow walls. Historians still argue whether this hierarchy was a practical necessity or a tool to dehumanize servants, with no clear motive in employers' journals or servants' rare memoirs. Some, citing household efficiency, say it organized complex homes, ensuring order. Others, noting its rigidity, argue it reinforced class oppression, keeping you subservient like the slaves it's likened to. You're stacking dishes, Mrs. Carter's, eyes boring into you, and wondering if this system's for the house's sake or to keep you small. The foyer's expectations we saw now a chain of command. The wedding night's legal power we felt echoed in this control. Your will is crushed as the coal underfoot. Time for a quick joke. Why was the maid's badge so small? Because her dreams were even smaller. You're chuckling, but it's hushed. The cook's scowl stifles it, and you're dodging a scullery. Maid's elbow. You're setting the tray down, the kitchen's heat prickling, as you take in the scene. Picture the scene. The kitchen's a chaotic hive, with a massive range spitting heat. Pots simmering, and servants darting cooks. Maids. A boy blacking boots. You're not in the foyer's glittering cage, or the doctor's office we'll visit later. You're in the house's engine, where hierarchy rules. The butler, Mr. Harris, lounges with tea, his rank granting leisure, while you, a lower maid, scrub grease, your hands blistered. Mrs. Carter, the housekeeper, barks orders, her keys jangling like a jailer's, and you're feeling the pecking order. Each servant above you a rung you'll never climb. It's not just work. It's a caste, where your mop badge marks you as lesser. The ignorance we faced in other tales now a structured silence, keeping you in line like the parlor's gossip we endured. Step closer to the range and notice the details. The scalding steam on your face, the faint clink of Mrs. Carter's keys, the way your badges thread phrase like your nerves. This kitchen's your world, like those bridal letters we read for courage. But it's oppressive, a microcosm of the house's power. You're thinking of that character book, how it binds you to this role, and how the hierarchy does too, each rank a step above your reach, like Charles's power over the bride. You're wondering why you're less than the footman, who sneers as he polishes silver, or why Mrs. Carter's word can dock your pay. You're craving fairness, but the system's a wall. The laudanum vials we saw tempting as a blur for this grind, though you resist. Eliza's strength in mind. Here's another chuckle. Why did the butler's tea taste better? Because it sipped. Your freedom first. You're smiling, but it's bitter. The scullery maid's cough pulls you back. Her eyes as tired as yours. You're also connecting the dots. The foyer's grandeur, the parlor's rules, the wedding night's chains they've led here, where hierarchy's the servant's law, not just a job but a life owned, like we feared in the chamber's dread. You're remembering those marriage manuals, vague as the housekeeper's praise, and how they align with this system, teaching obedience over dignity. You're thinking of other servants' cooks and manners, boys and sellers, their ranks like yours, each badge a shared brand, their struggles a mirror to the toil we've carried since the candlestick's shine. As you scrub a pot, Mrs. Carter's orders sharp, you're aching for rest, the kitchen's heat a prison, the hierarchy's ranks a chain you can't break. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just a ladder, it's a trap, making servants like you slaves to a system that thrives on your sweat, driven by wealth and power. You're thinking of those livery badges, marking you like cattle, like laudanum marked pain, and how they reflect a society that needs you, but scorns you. You're wondering about the maid you'll be, if you'll climb this ladder, or collapse under it. And the women who've scrubbed here before, their stories lost in the steam, the rushlight dims, the kitchen roars, and you're carrying this rigid order, ready to face the endless toil that defined your days. A grind as cruel as the badge you wear. One last joke to ease us forward. Why was the hierarchy so tall? Because it stood on Eliza's back. You're wiping your hands, the pot gleaming, as the kitchen's chaos presses in. With the hierarchy's grip heavy in your soul, you're ready to witness the grueling tasks that filled your days, a life of endless labor. You're elbow deep in a steaming tub of soapy water in the scullery of the Victorian townhouse. The air thick with the stench of grease and the sharp bite of lice stinging your nose. A single flickering candle casts shadows on the damp stone walls, and you're Eliza, a housemaid in the 1860s. Your arms aching as you scrub pots crusted with last night's roast. The kitchen's clamor hums beyond the door cook's shouting. A footman's boots clacking while the housekeeper's keys jangle somewhere close. A reminder of the hierarchy we climbed down those back stairs to face. You're here to witness the grueling tasks that defined Victorian servants' days. An endless grind of labor that left no room for rest or self. A life that felt like slavery under the mansion's polished facade. This is the sweat of servitude, and you're feeling its toll. Heavy as the iron skillet in your hands. The mainstream fact is that Victorian servants worked brutally long hours, often 16 to 18 hours a day, performing physically demanding tasks, with little rest, as documented in household schedules and servants' rare memoirs from the 1860s. As a housemaid, you cleaned fireplaces, polished silver, scrubbed floors, and hauled water. Your body a machine for the family's comfort, with only a half day off monthly, if lucky. You're scouring a pot, your knuckles raw, knowing you've been up since 5 a.m., stoking grates before Lady Margaret's breakfast, and you won't sleep until midnight. When the last dishes are done, the hierarchy we navigated keeps you at the bottom, your tasks the dirtiest. The foyer's grandeur, we saw a distant dream as you toil in this dim, damp hole. But here's a quirky tidbit. Servants sometimes used scullery songs, hummed ditties about scrubbing or polishing, to keep rhythm during repetitive tasks, passed down in oral tradition. In the 1860s, maids like you sang softly, lyrics mocking the gentry's laziness, a secret rebellion. You're humming one now, scrub the pot, the lady's not, and grinning it's like a Victorian playlist, cheekier than those livery badges we wore last time. You're half tempted to sing louder, letting the cook hear, but the housekeeper's jangle nearby stifles you, the grind's rhythm unbroken, like the hierarchy's iron grip we felt. Historians still argue whether servants' workloads were a necessary evil to maintain grand households or a deliberate exploitation to maximize profit, with no clear intent in employers' records or labor laws. Some, citing household budgets, say large staffs required constant tasks to justify costs. Others, pointing to servants' health issues, argue it was a system to extract every ounce of labor, akin to slavery's cruelty. You're rinsing a pot, your back screaming, and wondering if Lady Margaret needs all this silver, or just wants you broken. The foyer's expectations we saw now a task list that buries you. The wedding night's legal chains we felt mirrored in this relentless toil. Your body owned by the house. Time for a quick joke. Why was the pot so stubborn? Because it knew Eliza's hands were tired. You're chuckling. But it's hushed the scullery maid's cough beside you drowns it, her eyes as weary as yours. You're stacking the pot, the water sloshing, as you take in the scene. Picture the scene. The scullery's a grim cave, with a cracked sink, piles of dirty dishes, and a floor slick with soap. You're not in the kitchen's chaotic heart or the grand foyer's glow. You're in the house's underbelly, where tasks never end. You're scrubbing, sweeping, hauling coal for fires, water for baths, ashes from grates, each job a blow to your body, the hierarchy placing you below even the cook, who snaps for more plates. You're feeling the exhaustion, howled onto. Midnight leaves no time to breathe. The parlor's rules we navigated, demanding this labor to uphold the family's shine. Like the ignorance that left brides unprepared in other tales. The work's not just hard, it's endless, a cycle that grinds you down. The laudanum vials we saw tempting as a blur for this ache. Though you push on. Eliza's resolve steady, step closer to the sink and notice the details. The scalding water, burning your hands, the faint clang of a bell upstairs, the way the candle's flame wavers like your strength. This scullery's your prison, like those character books binding your fate, but it's physical, a space where your body's spent for others' ease. You're thinking of that livery badge, marking you for this toil, and how the tasks define you made. Not Eliza, a cog in the machine we saw in the hierarchy's ranks. You're wondering why the gentry need 10 courses or spotless grates. Their comfort, your pain. The doctor's myths about delicate women, we heard a cruel irony. As your muscles scream, you're craving rest. But the bell rings, Lady Margaret's tea tray, and you're moving. The grind, a chain you can't break. Here's another chuckle. Why was the scullery so hot? Because it cooked Eliza's hopes to ash. You're smiling, but it's grim. The maid side beside you pulls you back, her hands as red as yours. You're also connecting the dots. The foyer's opulence, the hierarchy's ladder, the parlor's demands they've led here, where tasks are the servant's life, not just work but a sentence, like the wedding night's physical fears we faced. You're remembering those scullery songs, a faint rebellion, and how they align with the sisterhood's whispers we heard, small defiances in a crushing world. You're thinking of other servants, footmen hauling coal, girls blacking boots, their tasks like yours, each scrub a shared burden, their toil a mirror to the struggle we've carried since the candlestick's Polish. As you dry your hands, the housekeeper's voice barking for the tray. You're aching for a moment's pause. The scullery's steam a trap. The task's a tide you can't outrun. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just labor, it's a system, treating servants like slaves by drowning them in work, driven by wealth and status. You're thinking of those scullery songs, a spark of spirit, like laudanum's false relief, and how they reflect a society that thrives on your exhaustion. You're wondering about the maid you'll be, if you'll endure this grind or snap. And the women who've scrubbed here before, their lives erased in the suds, the candle gutters. The bell rings again, and you're carrying this endless toil, ready to uncover the meager wages that trapped you here, a pittance for your pain. One last joke to ease us forward. Why did the dishes never end? Because they loved Eliza's misery more. You're grabbing the tray, the scullery's heat fading, as the kitchen's din calls. With the grueling tasks heavy in your soul, you're ready to explore the wages that bound you, a coin too small for freedom. You're trudging up the back stairs of the Victorian townhouse, the tray of polished silver in your hands wobbling as the air grows colder, laced with the faint must of damp wood and the lingering grease from the scullery's pots we scrubbed. A single rushlight flickers, barely cutting the gloom, and you're Eliza, a housemaid in the 1860s. Your legs heavy from the endless tasks that ground you down last time. The kitchen's clamor fades below, but the housekeeper's sharp call, "Eliza, hurry," echoes. a reminder of the hierarchy's grip we felt. You're here to uncover the meager wages that trapped Victorian servants in servitude, a pittance that kept you bound to this house, as inescapable as the grime under your nails. This is the coin of survival, and you're feeling its weight. Light in your pocket but heavy on your soul, like the tray threatening to slip. The mainstream fact is that Victorian servants, especially lower-ranking ones like housemaids, earned pitiful wages, often £10, £20 a year for women in the 1860s, as recorded in household accounts and labor surveys. Paid quarterly, with room and board deducted, you were left with barely enough for necessities, let alone savings to escape. You're clutching a few shillings from last month's pay, tucked in your apron, and you're calculating mend your boots or buy soap, knowing Lady Margaret's household, with its chandelier we saw in the foyer, spends more on wine in a week than you earn in a year. This wage isn't freedom, it's a leash, tying you to the scullery's grind we endured, as binding as the parlor's rules we felt in other tales. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants received veil money, small tips from house guests, handed out like alms but recorded in etiquette books as a servant's due. In the 1860s, these coins, slipped into your palm by a visiting lord, could double your weekly take, but only if you bowed low enough. You're imagining a guest's shilling, its shine mucking your mop badge, and grinning it's like a Victorian Venmo tip, but with more groveling. You're half tempted to linger by the drawing room for a chance at one, but the housekeeper's jangle up ahead keeps you moving. The wages sting sharper than those scullery songs we hummed for defiance. Historians still argue whether low wages were a deliberate strategy to keep servants dependent or a reflection of economic realities, with no clear intent in employers' ledgers or reformist tracts. Some, citing household budgets, say they were set by market demand, with too many workers for too few jobs. Others, noting servants' exploitation, argue they were a tool to ensure servitude, akin to slavery's economic control. You're hauling the tray, sweat beading despite the chill, and wondering if Lady Margaret pays you less to keep you desperate or because she can. The hierarchy's ranks we climbed and the tasks we toiled through now. A trap sealed by coins. The wedding nights. Power we felt a mirror to this bind. Your life owned by the house's purse. Time for a quick joke. Why was Eliz's wage so tiny? Because it fit her dreams in a thimble. You're chuckling, but it's hushed the footman's sneer as you pass stifles it. His higher pay a taunt. You're balancing the tray, the stairs creaking, as you take in the scene. Picture the scene. The stairwell's a dim tunnel, its walls scarred from years of trays and boots. The rushlights glow as weak as your savings. You're not in the scullery's steaming chaos or the foyer's glittering cage. You're in a liminal space, where wages define your worth. You're £12 a year, minus fines for broken plates, buys threadbare clothes, a bar of soap, maybe a letter home, but never freedom, the tasks we scrubbed through eating your days. The hierarchy placing you below even the scullery maid, who earns less. You're feeling the poverty, how each shilling's a choice seat or mend. The parlor's expectations we saw demanding your labor for pennies. Like the ignorance that left brides broke in other tales. The wage isn't just low, it's a lock, keeping you here. The laudanum vials we saw tempting as a blur for this despair. Though you grit your teeth, Eliza's spirit holding. Step closer to a landing and notice the details. The cold trays, edge biting your palms, the faint jingle of coins in your apron. The way the rushlights flame dances like your fleeting hopes. This stares your reality, like those character books we carried. But it's economic, a path where wages chain you. You're thinking of that veil money, how it's a guest's whim, not a right, and how your pay's a fraction of the butler's. His rank we saw in the kitchen buying comfort you'll never taste. You're wondering why your work rates, pots, floors earns so little, when Lady Margaret's gowns cost a year's wage, her wealth built on your back. The doctor's myths. About delicate women we heard a cruel jest as you haul this load. You're craving a way out, but the shillings won't stretch. The system a net you can't slip, like the hierarchy's rungs. Here's another chuckle. Why was the shilling so shy? Because it knew it couldn't free Eliza. You're smiling, but it's grim the housekeeper's call pulls you back. Her key's a warning of fines. You're also connecting the dots. The foyer's opulence, the hierarchy's ladder, the scullery's tasks they've led here, where wages are the servants. Shackle, not just a job but a life stolen, like the wedding night surrender we faced. You're remembering those scullery songs, a spark of defiance, and how they align with the sisterhood's whispers we heard, small fights against a crushing world. You're thinking of other servants' gooks, valets their wages like yours. Each coin a shared trap, their toil a mirror to the struggle we've carried since the candlestick's shine. Now dulled by this pittance, as you reach the top stair, Mrs. Carter's glare waiting. You're aching for a coin that buys more than soap. The stairwell's gloom a cage, the wages a knot you can't untie. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just pay, it's a system, treating servants like slaves by starving their dreams, driven by greed and status. You're thinking of those veil coins, a fleeting hope, like laudanum's false peace, and how they reflect a society that tosses scraps while demanding your all. You're wondering about the maid you'll be, if you'll save enough to leave or sink deeper. And the women who've climbed these stairs before, their lives spent for shillings. The rush light dims, the tray wobbles, and you're carrying this meager wage, ready to navigate the master's absolute control, a power as cruel as the coins lack. One last joke to ease us forward. Why was the wage so cruel? Because it loved the master more than Eliza. You're stepping into the hall, the tray steady, as the house's pulse quickens. With meager wages heavy in your soul, you're ready to face the master's control, the rule that made servitude a chain. You're standing in the grand drawing room of the Victorian townhouse, the air rich with the scent of polished mahogany, and the faint rose water of Lady Margaret's perfume lingering on velvet cushions. A chandelier glitters overhead, its crystals catching the gaslight, but you're Eliza, a housemaid in the 1860s. Your hands clasped tightly behind your apron, the meager shillings from last time's wages burning a hole in your pocket. The housekeeper, Mrs. Carter, hovers nearby, her keys jangling, as Lady Margaret, seated by the fire, issues a sharp command to adjust the curtains. You're here to navigate the master's absolute control, the unchecked power that Victorian employers held over servants, making your life feel like slavery under their whims. This is the iron fist of authority, and you're feeling its weight, heavy as the tray you carried up those back stairs, pressing you into the shadows. The mainstream fact is that Victorian employers had near total authority over their servants, with the ability to dictate their work, behavior, and even personal lives, as documented in household rules and legal cases from the 1860s. Masters like Lady Margaret could dismiss you without notice, fine you for mistakes, or control your movements, with no legal recourse for you, bound by the hierarchy we saw in the kitchen and the wages we counted. You're adjusting the curtains, your fingers fumbling under her gaze, and you're terrified a torn hem or a missed speck of dust could mean a docked shilling or the sack. The scullery's grind we endured a mere backdrop to her power, as absolute as the parlor's rules we felt in other tales. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some employers used servant bells, labeled with room names, to summon you instantly, wired to a board in the kitchen that rang like a schoolmaster's call. In the 1860s, house plans show these systems, a high-tech leash for the time. You're picturing the board's jangle, each bell a whip crack from Lady Margaret, and grinning it's like a Victorian group chat. But you're the only one who has to reply. You're half tempted to ignore it, dreaming of a moment's peace. But Mrs. Carter's glare and the character book we carried remind you. One misstep, and you're out. The master's control as tight as those livery badges we wore. Historians still argue whether this control was driven by practical needs to maintain order, or a deliberate assertion of class dominance, with no clear motive in employers' diaries or servants' rare accounts. Some, citing household efficiency, say strict oversight ensured tasks were done in complex homes. Others, noting dismissals for trivial faults, argue it was about reinforcing superiority, treating you like a slave to uphold power. You're smoothing the curtain, Lady Margaret sigh a warning, and wondering if her control is about the house or her ego. The hierarchy's ranks, the scullery's toil, and the wages trap we face now, a chain forged by her will. The wedding night's husbandly power we felt a mirror to this mastery. Your life owned by her command. Time for a quick joke. Why was the servant bell so loud? Because it shouted louder than Eliza's dreams. You're chuckling, but it's hushed Mrs. Carter's keys clink, and you're dodging her frown. You're stepping back from the curtain, the room's opulence mocking, as you take in the scene. Picture the scene. The drawing room's a gilded stage, with plush sofas, a marble fireplace, and Lady Margaret's embroidery frame gleaming. But it's a battlefield for you. You're not in the scullery's steaming sink or the backstairs' dim climb. You're in the master's domain, where control is absolute. Lady Margaret can order you to work past midnight, forbid you visitors, or search your room for immorality. Her word law, like Charles's over the bride we saw. You're feeling the powerlessness, how a spilled teacup could end your job. The tasks we scrubbed through a mere fraction of her demands. The parlor's expectations we navigated, now a personal tyranny, like the ignorance that left women blind in other tales. Her control isn't just work, it's your soul, dictating when you sleep, eat, or pray. The laudanum vials we saw tempting as a blur for this submission, though you grit your teeth. Eliza's resolve firm. Step closer to the fireplace and notice the details. The warm crackle of logs, the faint rustle of Lady Margaret's silk gown, the way the chandelier's light dances like her authority, unyielding. This room's a throne, like those veil coins we hoped for, but it's oppressive. A space where your life's hers. You're thinking of that character book, how her signature can ruin you, and how her control fining you for a cracked plate, banning letters from home mirrors the hierarchy's ranks we climbed. You're wondering why she needs this power, if it's order or cruelty. Her gaze as cold as the doctor's myths we debunked about delicate bodies, your strength unseen. As you bow, you're craving defiance, but her bell could ring any moment. The system a cage, like the wages net we counted. Here's another chuckle. Why was Lady Margaret's command so sharp? Because it cut deeper than Eliza's hopes. You're smiling, but it's grim. Mrs. Carter's nod pulls you back, her loyalty to the mistress a warning. You're also connecting the foyer's opulence, the hierarchy's ladder, the scullery's tasks, the wages trap they've led here, where master's control is the servant's chain, not just a job but a life owned. Like the wedding night's surrender we faced. You're remembering those scullery songs, a spark of spirit, and how they align with the sisterhood's whispers we heard. Small rebellions against a crushing world. You're thinking of other servants' valets, cooks their lives like yours. Each order a shared yoke. Their toil a mirror to the struggle we've carried since the candlestick's polish. Now dulled by her rule, as you adjust a cushion at Lady Margaret's snap. Her eyes narrowing, you're aching for a voice. The drawing room's warmth a prison, her control a weight you can't lift. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just authority, it's domination. Treating servants like slaves by owning their every move. Driven by class and power. You're thinking of those servant bells, calling you like chains. Like laudanum's false peace, and how they reflect a society that thrives on your obedience. You're wondering about the maid you'll be, if you'll bow forever, or find a crack in her rule. And the women who've served here before, their spirits lost in the cushions. The gaslight dims, her bell rings, and you're carrying this absolute control, ready to face the cruel punishments that enforced it. A lash as harsh as her gaze. One last joke to ease us forward. Why did the bell never stop? Because it loved ruling Eliza's life. You're moving to the bell, the cushion fluffed, as the room's hush tightens, with the master's control heavy in your soul. You're ready to explore the punishments that bound you, a cruelty that sealed your servitude. You're cowering in the chilly servants' hall of the Victorian townhouse. The air sharp with the scent of damp stone, and the faint tang of stale bread from a meager supper. On the scarred wooden table, a single oil lamp sputters, casting long shadows, and you're Eliza, a housemaid in the 1860s. Your apron crumpled as you stand before Mrs. Carter, the housekeeper, her keys glinting like a judge's gavel. Lady Margaret's bell, that symbol of control we felt in the drawing room, is silent now. But her fury over a chipped teacup has summoned you here. You're here to face the cruel punishments that enforced Victorian servants' servitude. The harsh disciplines that made your life feel like slavery. Each penalty a lash to keep you in line. This is the sting of retribution, and you're feeling its bite. Raw as the cold seeping through your thin dress. The mainstream fact is that Victorian servants faced severe punishments for even minor infractions, including wage deductions, physical reprimands, or dismissal without a reference, as documented in household rules and court records from the 1860s. Employers like Lady Margaret could fine you for breakages, slap you for insolence, or cast you out, leaving you jobless and destitute. With no legal protection, you're trembling as Mrs. Carter scolds, docking a week's wages to shillings for the teacup, her voice cutting like a blade, and you're reeling. The scullery's toil we scrubbed through, and the meager wages we counted now slashed by her whim. The master's absolute power we faced last time, a whip in her hand, as brutal as the parlor's gossip we endured in other tales. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some households used shame boards, wooden plaques hung in the servants' hall, listing your mistakes like Eliza, broke cup, to humiliate you before peers. In the 1860s, estate inventories noted these, a public mark of failure. You're glancing at one on the wall, your name scrawled in chalk, and grinning grimly. It's like a Victorian Yelp review, harsher than those character books we carried. You're half wishing you could erase it, but Mrs. Carter's glare and the lamp's flicker keep you rooted. The punishment's shame burning hotter than the scullery's steam we felt. A reminder of your place in the hierarchy's ranks. Historians still argue whether these punishments were meant to maintain discipline or to degrade servants, reinforcing their servitude, with no clear intent in employers' logs or servants. Sparse accounts, some, citing household order, say they ensured efficiency in chaotic homes. Others, pointing to their cruelty, argue they were designed to break spirits, mirroring slavery's tactics to dehumanize. You're clutching your hands, the docked wages awound, and wondering if Lady Margaret finds you to keep the house running or to crush you. The drawing room's control, the scullery's tasks, and the wages trap we faced, now a noose tightened by this penalty. The wedding night's fear of failure we've felt a mirror to this dread. Your worth reduced to a chipped cup, time for a quick joke. Why was the shame board so chatty? Because it tattled louder than the butler. You're chuckling, but it's hushed Mrs. Carter's keys jangle, and you're dodging her scowl. You're shrinking against the table, the lamps glow dim, as you take in the scene. Picture the scene. The servants' hall is stark, with bare walls, a rickety bench, and a cold hearth. A far cry from the drawing room's velvet we stood in, or the scullery's heat we toiled through. You're not facing Lady Margaret's direct wrath, but Mrs. Carter's her proxy, wielding punishment like a scepter, the hierarchy's chain tight. You're not alone, a footman's name is on the board for tardiness, fined a shilling, and you're feeling the shared sting. How a broken dish or a late tray could cost you food or boots. The wages we scraped by are now a dream. The punishment's not just money. It's shame, fear, a reminder you're disposable. The parlor's expectations we saw now a lash, like the ignorance that shamed brides in other tales. Step closer to the shame board and notice the details. The rough chalk under your gaze, the faint creak of the table, the way the lamp's light makes your name glow like a brand. This hall's a courtroom, like those servant bells summoning control, but it's brutal. Where your mistakes are your sentence. You're thinking of that character book. How a bad note from Mrs. Carter could end you, and how punishments, fines, slaps, or worse enforce the master's power we bowed to. You're wondering why a teacup's worth more than your week's bread. Why Lady Margaret's temper rules your fate. The doctor's myths about delicate women we heard a cruel irony as you stand, strong but shattered. You're craving justice, but the board's chalk and the docked shillings are your reality. The laudanum vials we saw tempting as a blur for this disgrace, though you hold fast. Eliza's grit your anchor. Here's another chuckle. Why was the fine so mean? Because it loved the teacup more than Eliza. You're smiling, but it's bitter. The footman sigh beside you pulls you back, his fine a shared scar. You're also connecting the foyer's opulence, the hierarchy's ladder, the scullery's tasks, the wages trap, the master's control they've led here, where punishments are the servant's yoke. Not just work, but a life chained, like the wedding night's surrender we faced. You're remembering those scullery songs, a faint defiance, and how they align with the sisterhood's whispers we heard. Small fights against a cruel world. You're thinking of other servants' maids, grooms their fines like yours, each penalty a shared wound, their toil a mirror to the struggle we've carried since the candlestick's polish, now tarnished by this lash. As you back away from Mrs. Carter, her lecture done, you're aching for dignity, the servant's holla. So, the punishments sting, a mark you can't erase, like the chalk on the board. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just discipline, it's oppression, treating servants like slaves by breaking their will, driven by power and privilege. You're thinking of those shame boards, shaming you like gossip shamed brides, and how they reflect a society that thrives on your suffering. You're wondering about the maid you'll be, if you'll survive these lashes or snap. And the women who've stood here before, their spirits lost in the chalk. The lamp dims, the hall empties, and you're carrying this cruel sting, ready to probe the stolen privacy that stripped your freedom, a loss as deep as the fines cut. One last joke to ease us forward. Why was punishment so harsh? Because it wanted Eliza's heart, not just her coins. You're slipping from the hall, the board's chalk fading, as the house's hush closes in. with cruel punishments heavy in your soul. You're ready to explore the privacy servants lost, a life laid bare to the master's eyes. You're creeping into the cramped attic room of the Victorian townhouse. The air stale with the scent of mildew, and the faint tang of candle wax from a stub, burning on a rickety table. The slanted ceiling presses low, and you're Eliza, a housemaid, in the 1860s. Your bones aching from the scullery's grind and the sting of that fine for the chipped teacup. Still smarting, the creak of the floorboards under your worn boots is the only sound, but you're tense. Knowing Mrs. Carter's keys could jangle at any moment, her authority a shadow even here. You're here to probe the stolen privacy that stripped Victorian servants of freedom, how employers invaded your personal space and life, making servitude feel like slavery by leaving no corner your own. This is the loss of self, and you're feeling its weight, heavy as the thin mattress on the floor. A far cry from the drawing room's velvet we stood in. The mainstream fact is that Victorian servants had virtually no privacy, with employers controlling their living spaces, possessions, and even personal conduct, as documented in household rules and servants' accounts from the 1860s. Your attic room, shared with another maid, could be searched at will, your letters read, your behavior scrutinized, with no legal right to object, bound by the master's control we faced last time. You're tucking a letter from your sister under the mattress, heart racing as you check the door, fearing Mrs. Carter's inspection. The hierarchy's grip we climbed and the punishments we endured now. A constant surveillance, as intrusive as the gossip sting we felt in the tea room of other tales. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants used secret pockets, hidden flaps sewn into their aprons, to conceal personal items like letters or trinkets from employers' prying eyes. In the 1860s, seamstresses' patterns included these. A quiet rebellion against intrusion. You're patting one now, a scrap of ribbon from home safe inside, and grinning it's like a Victorian hidey hole. Sneakier than those shame boards we saw in the servants' hall. You're half tempted to add more secrets, but the creak of a stair outside snaps you back. The lack of privacy a chain tighter than the meager wages we counted. Your life an open book to Lady Margaret's whims. Historians still argue whether this invasion of privacy was a practical measure to ensure loyalty, or a deliberate tactic to dehumanize servants. With no clear intent in household manuals or rare servant testimonies. Some, citing employers' fears of theft, say it was about protecting property in busy homes. Others, pointing to its pervasiveness, argue it was a way to strip you of identity, reinforcing servitude's slave-like conditions. You're smoothing the mattress, hiding the letter, and wondering if Lady Margaret searches your room to keep you honest or to break you. The drawing room's control, the scullery's tasks, and the fines we faced now a theft of your private self. The wedding night's loss of autonomy we felt a mirror to this exposure. Your heart laid bare like your belongings. Time for a quick joke. Why was the secret pocket so small? Because Eliza's privacy was even smaller. You're chuckling, but it's hushed. The wind rattling the attic window drowns it. And you're wary of Mrs. Carter's patrol. You're sitting on the mattress. The candles glow faint. As you take in the scene, you picture the scene. The attic's a bleak cell, with a sagging bed, a cracked wash basin, and a single peg for your spare dress. A world away from the foyer's chandelier we marveled at or the drawing room's plush cushions. You're not in the servants' hall with its chalked shame or the scullery's steaming sink. You're in your supposed sanctuary, but it's no refuge. The door has no lock. Mrs. Carter can barge in, and Lady Margaret's rules no visitors. No letters without approval make this space hers, not yours. The tasks we toiled through a backdrop to this theft. You're feeling the violation, how your diary, if you had one, could be read, your thoughts judged. The parlor's expectations we saw now a spy in your room. Like the ignorance that stripped brides bare in other tales, step closer to the wash basin and notice the details. The cold tin under your fingers, the faint drip of a leak, the way the candle's flame trembles like your nerve. This attic's a cage, like those veil coins we hoped for, but it's exposed. Where your life's an open ledger. You're thinking of that character book, how it records your obedience, and how this lack of privacy searches, rules, curfews mirrors the punishments we faced, each intrusion a blow to your soul. You're wondering why your room's not yours, why Lady Margaret needs to know your sister's words. The doctor's myths about delicate women we heard a cruel jest as you hide your heart in a pocket. You're craving a space to breathe, but the attic's shared, the house's eyes everywhere. The laudanum vials we saw tempting as a blur for this exposure. Though you cling to Eliza's defiance, a spark in the dark. Here's another chuckle. Why was the attic so nosy? Because it told Lady Margaret Eliza's secrets. You're smiling, but it's grim the other maid's snore from the bed pulls you back. Her presence another loss of solitude. You're also connecting the foyer's opulence, the hierarchy's ladder, the scullery's tasks, the wages trap, the master's control, the fine sting they've led here, where privacy's theft is the servant's final chain, not just work but a life owned. Like the wedding night's surrender we faced, you're remembering those scullery songs, a faint rebellion, and how they align with the sisterhood's whispers we heard, small fights against a crushing world. You're thinking of other servants' cooks, valets their rooms like yours, each search a shared wound, their toil a mirror to the struggle we've carried since the candlestick's polish. Now dimmed by this invasion, as you blow out the candle, Mrs. Carter's footsteps fading. You're aching for a corner of your own, the attic's gloom a cell, the stolen privacy a wound you can't bandage. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just a room, it's a system, treating servants like slaves by erasing themselves, driven by power and suspicion. You're thinking of those secret pockets, hiding scraps of you, like laudanum hid pain, and how they reflect a society that owns your body and soul. You're wondering about the maid you'll be, if you'll guard your heart or lose it, and the women who've slept here before, their secrets lost in the dark. The attic settles, the night deepens, and you're carrying this stolen space, ready to delve into the social stigma that branded you, a scorn as harsh as the master's gaze. One last joke to ease us forward. Why was privacy so shy? Because it fled from Eliza's attic. You're curling onto the mattress, the letter safe, as the dark closes in. With stolen privacy heavy in your soul, you're ready to explore the social stigma servants faced, a mark that sealed your servitude. You're trudging through the bustling streets of London, the air thick with the scent of coal smoke and the damp tang of the Thames, as horse carts rumble and hawkers shout. Over the cobblestone clatter, a faded shawl wraps your shoulders, and you're Eliza, a housemaid in the 1860s. Your day off, a rare breath from the attic's confinement we huddled in last time. Passers-by in top hats and bustled gowns brush past, their glances sharp, marking you as below stairs by your plain dress and calloused hands. You're here to delve into the social stigma that branded Victorian servants, the scorn from society that cast you as lesser, reinforcing your slave-like status beyond the townhouse's walls. This is the lash of judgment, and you're feeling its sting, raw as the stairs cutting through the fog, heavier than the locket from a bride's fears we once held. The mainstream fact is that Victorian servants faced widespread social stigma, viewed as inferior by the middle and upper classes, who saw domestic work as degrading. As noted in social commentaries and novels like Vanity Fair from the 1860s, your role as a housemaid, vital to Lady Margaret's household, we saw marked you as low, your labor dismissed as menial, your character suspect, with society assuming you were dishonest or immoral. You're dodging a gentleman's sneer as you pass a tea shop, your mop badge from the kitchen's hierarchy a scarlet letter, and you're shrinking. The scullery's toil we scrubbed through, and the attic's stolen privacy we mourn now, a public brand, as damning as the gossip we faced in a tea room's whispers from other tales. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants wore Sunday bonnets, slightly fancier hats for days off, to blend into crowds and dodge stigma, a small act of camouflage. In the 1860s, milliners' records show these affordable caps, bought with hoarded shillings. You're adjusting yours, its ribbon frayed, and grinning it's like a Victorian incognito mode, flimsier than those secret pockets we hid letters in. You're half tempted to tilt it jauntily, claiming a moment's dignity, but a lady's tut as she passes reminds you of your place. The stigma's weight heavier than the wages we scraped by on, pinning you to the servant class. Historians still argue whether this stigma was a deliberate tool to maintain class divides, or a cultural byproduct of Victorian snobbery, with no clear intent in social records or etiquette guides. Some, citing employers' attitudes, say it was engineered to keep servants subservient, reinforcing their slave-like role. Others, noting widespread prejudice, argue it was a reflex of a society obsessed with status, branding you without thought. You're clutching your shawl, a shopkeeper's curt move along stinging, and wondering if this scorn's meant to keep you down or just flows from their world. The drawing room's control, the punishments we faced, and the privacy we lost, now a public curse. The wedding night's shame we felt a mirror to this branding. Your worth erased by a glance. Time for a quick joke. Why was the bonnet so hopeful? Because it thought it could fool the gentry. You're chuckling, but its hushed a street urchin's laugh drowns it, and you're wary of a constable's gaze. You're weaving through the crowd, the fog dampening your cap, as you take in the scene. Picture the scene. The streets a chaotic whirl, with shop windows gleaming, omnibuses clattering, and ladies in silks eyeing you like dirt. You're not in the attic's grim cell, or the servants' hall with its shame board. You're in society's open court, where stigma's the verdict. Your maid's dress, your rough hands they scream servant, drawing sneers from those who'd faint without your labor. The tasks we toiled through in the scullery, a hidden engine for their world. You're feeling the humiliation, how a shopgirl serves you last, how a gentleman steps aside like you're diseased. The parlors, expectations we saw, now a public shunning, like the ignorance that cloaked brides in other tales. The stigma's not just scorn, it's a wall cutting you from respect. The laudanum vials we saw tempting as a blur for this disgrace, though you walk on. Eliz's grit your shield. Step closer to a shop window and notice the details. The cool glass under your fingers, the faint jingle of a passing cart, the way your reflection shows a tired face under the bonnet's brim. This street's a stage, like those veil coins we hoped for, but it's cruel, branding you with every stare. You're thinking of that character book, how it marks your service, and how stigma marks your soul. The punishments we faced for a teacup now echoed in a lady's sniff, each slide a blow. You're wondering why your work cleaning, cooking, serving is less than her idleness, why society scorns the hands that build it. The doctor's myths about low classes we Heard a cruel echo as you stand, strong but shamed. You're craving belonging, but the street's eyes are cold, the stigma a chain, like the master's control we bowed to. Here's another chuckle. Why was the street so mean? Because it loved scorning Eliz's cap. You're smiling, but it's bitter. A newsboy shout pulls you back, his grin kinder than the gentry's. You're also connecting the dots. The foyer's opulence, the hierarchy's ladder, the scullery's tasks, the wages trap, the master's control, the fine sting, the privacy's theft. They've led here, where stigma's the servant's public chain, not just work but a life branded, like the wedding night's exposure we faced. You're remembering those scullery songs, a spark of defiance, and how they align with the sisterhood's whispers we heard, small fights against a cruel world. You're thinking of other servants, footmen, maids, their stigma like yours, each sneer a shared wound, their toil a mirror to the struggle we've carried since the candlestick's polish, now tarnished by this scorn. As you turn toward home, the shopkeeper's dismissal echoing, you're aching for respect, the streets bustle a gauntlet, the stigma a mark you can't wash off, like the addict's mildew. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just scorn, it's a system, treating servants like slaves by branding them lesser, driven by class and cruelty. You're thinking of those Sunday bonnets, hiding your shame, like laudanum hid pain, and how they reflect a society that needs you but despises you. You're wondering about the maid you'll be, if you'll bear this scorn or defy it. And the women who've walked here before, their dignity lost in the crowd. The fog thickens, the street fades, and you're carrying this branded shame, ready to discover the quiet resistance servants waged, a whisper against the lash. One last joke to ease us forward. Why did stigma love the street? Because it shamed Eliza louder than bells. You're slipping through the fog, the bonnet tilted, as the city's hum softens, with social stigma heavy in your soul. You're ready to explore the servants' quiet resistance, the defiance that broke their chains. You're huddled in the dim pantry of the Victorian townhouse, the air heavy with the scent of flour sacks and the faint tang of vinegar from a barrel in the corner. A single candle flickers on a crate, casting jittery shadows. And you're Eliza, a house maid in the 1860s, your apron smudged as you whisper with Jane, the scullery maid, her eyes gleaming with mischief. The street stinging stigma still burns from your day off. But here, in this stolen moment, you're plotting a small rebellion against the master's iron rule. You're here to discover the quiet resistance Victorian servants waged, the subtle acts of defiance that pushed back against their slave-like treatment, from the scullery's grind to the attic's exposure. This is the spark of rebellion, and you're feeling its thrill. Fragile as the candle's flame, but fierce as the resolve in Jane's nod. The mainstream fact is that Victorian servants, despite their harsh conditions, engaged in subtle forms of resistance, such as work slowdowns, secret gatherings, or small thefts of food, as noted in rare servant accounts and employer complaints from the 1860s. Unable to openly rebel, due to the risk of dismissal or worse, you found ways to reclaim agency, hiding a biscuit, dawdling on tasks, or sharing forbidden stories within the constraints of the hierarchy we climbed and the punishments we faced. You're slipping a crust of bread into your pocket, Jane's wink a signal, and you're grinning, heart racing, the master's control we bowed to in the drawing room, now a wall you're chipping at. As daring as the sisterhood's whispers we heard in other tales. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants carved rebel marks, tiny symbols like stars or crosses, into hidden spots under tables, behind shelves as a secret sign of defiance. In the 1860s, archaeological finds in old estates revealed these, etched by maids like you. You're tracing a star on the pantry's wooden beam, your knife barely scratching, and chuckling it's like a Victorian graffiti tag. Bolder than those Sunday bonnets we wore to dodge stigma. You're half tempted to carve your name, claiming this space, but Jane's nudge and the creak of a floorboard outside keep you cautious. The resistance is thrill-tempered by the fines we endured for a teacup. A risk you're defying with this bread. Historians still argue whether these acts of resistance were significant rebellions or mere survival tactics, with no clear impact in household records or social histories. Some, citing servant turnover, say they disrupted the system, weakening its hold. Others, noting the era's stability, argue they were too small to challenge the slave-like servitude, overshadowed by the master's power. You're pocketing the crust, Jane's whisper about slacking on the silver polish sparking ideas, and wondering if this defiance matters or just keeps you sane. The scullery's tasks we toiled through, the wages trap we counted, and the stigma's lash we faced now await your pushing against. The wedding night's quiet courage we felt a mirror to this spark. Your spirit unbowed despite the chains. Time for a quick joke. Why was the rebel mark so sneaky? Because it outsmarted Mrs. Carter's keys. You're chuckling, but its hushed Jane's giggle stifles it, and you're wary of the butlers. Patrol. You're leaning closer to the candle, its wax dripping, as you take in the scene. Picture the scene. The pantry's a cramped haven, with shelves of jars, a sack of potatoes sagging, and the candles glow a conspiratorial light. You're not on that scornful London street or in the attic's exposed cell. You're in a stolen space, where resistance whispers. Jane's sharing a trick, spill water to delay a task while you plan to lose a spoon. Small acts that chip at Lady Margaret's control we cowered under. The hierarchy's ranks we climbed a backdrop to this defiance. You're feeling the rush, how these moments steal back a piece of you. The privacy we lost in the attic reclaimed in this flicker. The parlor's expectations we saw now a rule you're bending. Like the ignorance that sparked rebellion in other tales, step closer to the beam and notice the details. The rough wood under your fingers, the faint rustle of Jane's skirt, the way the candle's flame dances like you're daring. This pantry's a refuge, like those secret pockets we hid letters in, but it's alive. A stage for your fight. You're thinking of that shame board, how it branded your mistakes, and how these acts bred marks, slowdowns erase its chalk, a defiance of the punishments we faced. You're wondering about other servants, footmen hiding wine, cooks burning toast by mistake, their rebellions like yours, their stars etched in shadows. The doctor's myths about low classes we heard a lie as you plot with Jane, strong despite the stigma. You're craving freedom, but the pantry's a start. The laudanum vials we saw no match for this spark. Eliza's resolve burning bright. Here's another chuckle. Why did the bread blush? Because it knew Eliza's pocket was its hero. You're smiling, but it's fierce Jane's plan to forget a chore pulls you back. Her courage of fire. You're also connecting the foyer's opulence, the hierarchy's ladder, the scullery's tasks, the wages trap, the master's control, the fine's sting, the privacy's theft, the stigma's lash they've led here, where resistance is the servant's whisper. Not just work, but a life reclaimed, like the wedding night's defiance we felt. You're remembering those scullery songs, a shared spirit, and how they align with this pantry's plot, a fight against a crushing world. You're thinking of other servants, grooms, maids, their rebellions like yours. Each act a shared flame, their toil a mirror to the struggle we've carried since the candlestick's polish. Now lit by this defiance, as you douse the candle, Jane's shadow merging with yours, you're ready to slip back to work. The pantry's secrets a warmth against the house's cold, the resistance a seed you'll nurture. You're starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just defiance, it's survival. A way for servants to reclaim their souls from a system that enslaved them. Driven by courage and cunning. You're thinking of those rebel marks, etching your fight like laudanum etched pain, and how they reflect a society that pushed you down but couldn't douse your spark. You're wondering about the maid you'll be, if you'll defy more or be caught. And the women who've plotted here before, their spirits in the beams. The pantry darkens, the house hums, and you're carrying this quiet resistance ready to reflect on the legacy of servile chains, a mark on a world. One last joke to ease us forward. Why was resistance so quiet? Because it out-whispered Lady Margaret's bells. You're slipping from the pantry, the crust hidden, as the dark closes in. With quiet resistance heavy in your soul, you're ready to explore the legacy of servitude, the chains that shaped a society. You're settled on a low stone wall at the edge of a London alley, the air cool with the scent of wet cobblestones and the distant whiff of bread from a nearby bakery. As dawn creeps over the city in the 1860s, a tattered shawl wraps your shoulders. And you're Eliza, a housemaid. Your hands still rough from the pantry's defiance we whispered with Jane. The rebel mark star-etched in your memory. The streets quiet, save for a milk cart's rattle. And you're reflecting on the legacy of servile chains. How the treatment of Victorian servants, your grueling tasks, stolen privacy, and branded stigma shaped society's heart and future. The townhouse's bells are silent for now, but its weight lingers, tying your struggle to a broader story. This is the echo of servitude, and you're feeling its resonance. Soft as the morning mist, but enduring as the stones beneath you. The mainstream fact is that the harsh treatment of Victorian servants, peaking in the 1860s, left a lasting impact on British society, influencing labor reforms and cultural views on class, as seen in early trade union records and literature like Mary Barton 1848. Your slave-like conditions, long hours, low wages, and master's control we faced exposed the era's inequalities, sparking slow changes like the 1870s labor laws and novels that humanized servants, shifting attitudes toward domestic work. You're rubbing your hands, the scullery's scars we earned aching, and you're seeing your toil, from the foyer's polish to the attic's loss, as a thread in this shift. The resistance we plotted with Jane, a seed for a world where maids might stand taller, unlike the parlor's rigid rules we felt in other tales. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some servants' struggles inspired maid ballads, penny songs sold on street corners, with lyrics about scrubbing and defiance, like your scullery songs, but printed for all. In the 1870s, broadsheet sellers hawked these, giving voice to your pain. You're picturing one flapping on a vendor's stall, its words praising a maid's grit, and grinning it's like a Victorian protest playlist, louder than those rebel marks we carved in the pantry. You're half tempted to hum one, claiming your story, but the milkman's whistle keeps you quiet. The legacies weigh heavier than the wages we scraped by on, a mark on history's page. Historians still argue whether servants' treatment drove significant reform or was a minor catalyst in broader labor movements, with no clear verdict in union records or social histories. Some, citing early labor laws, say it galvanized change, exposing class cruelty. Others, noting persistent inequality, argue its impact was overstated, dwarfed by industrial workers' fights. You're leaning against the wall, the alleys, grit under your boots, and wondering if your struggle, from the hierarchy's ranks to the stigma's lash we faced, mattered, Or if it's just a whisper in time, the drawing room's control, the fines we paid, and the privacy we lost, a quiet cry against a louder world. The wedding night's defiance we felt, a mirror to your own, a spark that might yet burn. Time for a quick joke. Why did the maid ballad sing? Because it outvoiced Eliza's silent tears. You're chuckling, but its soft a stray cat's meow drowns it. And you're wary of a watchman's lantern. You're settling deeper on the wall, the shawl slipping as you take in the scene. Picture the scene. The alley's a narrow haven, with crumbling bricks, a flickering gaslight, and the dawn painting the sky a faint gold, a world away from the tea room's gossip we fled. You're not in the pantry's defiant glow, or the servants' hall's shame. You're in a space of reflection, where servitude's legacy feels vast. Your life polishing candlesticks we started with, scrubbing pots, hiding letters, wasn't just toil, it was a force, shaping stories, laws, and hearts, from Dickens's novels to union halls. The tasks we labored through, a spark for change, like the sisterhood's courage in other tales. You're feeling the ripple, how your pain, tied to the master's power, and the stigma sneer, nudged society to see servants as human, not cogs, a shift as slow as the dawn's light. Step closer to the gaslight and notice the details. The cool stone under your fingers, the faint clatter of the milk cart, the way the shawl's threads fray like your past. This alley's a bridge, like those veil coins we hoped for, but it's timeless, weaving your story into history's cloth. You're thinking of that fine for the teacup, how it cut deeper than wages, and how it fueled tales that questioned such cruelty, or the pantry's resistance, a whisper that echoed in reforms, the hierarchy's chains we climbed, breaking link by link. You're wondering about other servants' cooks, grooms, their struggles like yours, their ballads sung in alleys, their defiance shaping a world where work might mean dignity, not slavery, a legacy from the scullery's suds to tomorrow's hope. Here's another chuckle. Why was the legacy so quiet? Because it grew louder than Lady Margaret's bells. You're smiling, but it's tender. The bakery's scent feels like promise, a new day's warmth. You're also connecting the threads, the foyer's opulence, the hierarchy's ladder, the scullery's tasks, the wages trap, the master's control, the fine's sting, the privacy's theft, the stigma's lash, the pantry's spark they've led here, where servitude's chains left a mark, from songs to laws, a legacy of pain turned to progress. You're remembering those laudanum vials, numbing other struggles, and how your fight, like Jane's, outshone them, a defiance that echoes in freer lives. You're thinking of servants who followed, their work less branded, their stories built on yours. Each toil a seed for change. Now, let's let the world soften, the edges blurring like a gentle sigh. You're still on that wall, the alleys, dawn wrapping you in a quiet embrace, the Thames' distant hum a lullaby. Jane's whispered defiance rests light in your heart, a warm ember. The townhouse's bells and burdens fading like mist under the rising sun. You've walked through kitchens and attics, carried toil, shame, and sparks, and that's enough. Picture a quiet field, its grass swaying under dawn's first light, where your struggle, Jane's courage, and countless servants' dreams drift like fireflies. The chains, the bells, the scorn, they're gone, leaving only peace, a world holding you close. Let the dawn deepen, let the silence cradle you. Your heart's full, your eyes heavy, and the morning's ready to weave you into its dreams. Sleep now, sweet listener, and rest in the glow of stories that endure, soft as the sunrise ahead.